Stay tuned for the Rick Saphire Show.
The following program is a copyright feature of York Publications and Rick Saphire Productions, Incorporated. Any use of the material in this podcast without express permission of the copyright owners is strictly prohibited.
Hey, look alive! Everything lights up, makes you want to shout. Talk about happiness, that's what we're talking about. No money won't bring you happiness, but we know who will.
You're listening to The Rick Saphire Show.
Come on now, smile, get happy, yeah. Now tune in and turn on.
Hi everybody, this is Rick Saphire and I'm here with my co-host, Linda Pierce. Linda, we actually have been doing radio programs, if you want to take all of the history, for almost 30 years.
No, that can't be true.
Well, we were we had a live weekly radio program on a station called Yesterday USA. They started in 1995.
But I was in high school then, Rick.
Yes, and I was chasing you around with candy bars, don't you remember? Yeah, no, we've been doing this for a very long, but this is a very unique kind of program because we're talking about one topic, and that is a book that I wrote with my wife Sheila, and the name of the book is The Real Jerry Lewis Story. Linda, can you imagine why I called it that?
Because it's about Jerry Lewis.
Good.
It's his story, and it's real.
Well, that's the main thing. It's real. I was Jerry Lewis's personal manager for years, but before that, I was his show business protege as a young comedy magician and comedian. And before that, I was his friend starting at the age of 6. So I had a very long association with Jerry, but I learned a lot of things. Actually, about 10 years before Jerry's passing, I wrote a book called Jerry Lewis in a Nutshell. And Linda, you helped me with that book because you were an editor on that book. And by the way, folks, the big secret is Linda Pierce was also one of the editors of The Real Jerry Lewis Story. So congratulations to you, Linda.
Thank you, Rick.
But let's talk a little bit about the book. Bonjour, Linda.
Oh, bonjour, Rick. And speaking of French.
Oh?
Don't you have a short audio clip that you'd like to play?
Actually, I have an audio clip that runs about a minute and a half, and I have kept this audio clip undercover. If this audio clip were released years ago, the likelihood is the French would have never given Jerry the Legion of Honor. This is why we call this program, and why we call the book, The Real Jerry Lewis Story.
Well, you would be amazed at the difference between a German fan and a French fan. I've looked at it for a long time. A German fan is literally that. And because I sit in Berlin, I'm not making the German fan any better than the French fan, I'm only giving you facts. The German fan is just that, for no reasons other than they like it, period. It's that simple. The French fan wants you to know that they've thought this out. They want you to know that you should thank your God blessings for they are recognizing you. And they believe that only they know what's behind every piece of material that had some kind of backstory. They know that story, and they want you to know they know. And they're really all full of shit.
Okay, Linda, what do you think about that bit of hysteria?
Well, that was pretty bombastic, I think. I was just wondering, why was he talking about being in Germany?
Oh yeah, we were actually at a place called the American Academy. I had Jerry booked to appear on a television program in Germany called the Golden Camera Awards. and that was tantamount to, I guess, the Emmys in the United States. And as part of the tour that we did, for 2 years in a row, Jerry was speaking at the American Academy. And this is an organization that is bent on bringing Germany and the United States closer together through the arts. Now, Linda, it is time for the portion of our program called True or False. Linda, I'm going to ask you to read some questions, and the audience will have to decide whether the answer to these questions is true or false. And audience, you should have a pencil or a pen and paper with you. Write them down. Linda will tell you how they're numbered, and put a T or an F next to the number. And at the end of the program, we're going to check and see how well you did. We're going to give you the answers. So, Linda, you're on your own.
Question number 1, true or false? Jerry Lewis made his stage debut singing Brother Can You Spare a Dime when he was 5 years old.
Next one.
True or false? In the early 1940s, Jerry Lewis came up with the idea to do a record mime routine as his first act. Question number 3, true or false? In the early 1940s, Jerry Lewis worked as a busboy in the Catskills at Brown's Hotel in Loch Sheldrake, New York, before becoming an entertainer. Question number 4, true or false? In 1953, Martin and Lewis were paid $3,000 a week to perform at New York's Copacabana nightclub.
Okay, that is the first series of questions. And a little bit later on in our podcast, we're going to ask you a few more. You've got a few more, hey, Linda?
We've got a few more, Rick.
Okay, so we'll get back to that. But I'm going to play a little bit of audio now, which is very touching and kind of opens up a bunch of questions that the audience might have. And by the way, if there are questions that we don't answer during the course of this program, all of the answers are in my book, The Real Jerry Lewis Story, which, by the way, you can order on Amazon by going to Amazon.com. I'm going to play a very touching and dramatic audio clip of a young lady by the name of Suzan Minoret.
Well, Susan is actually the biological daughter of Jerry Lewis.
That's right. And most people in the world didn't know about that until Susan called me and asked me if I were associated with Jerry Lewis, which she probably already knew, otherwise why would she call me? I don't think she was cold canvassing. I actually saw her in Florida when I was down there with Gary Lewis and the Playboys, and Susan only wanted to reconnect with her father, who she had met, but only for one day. I suggested we make a little video and send it to Jerry and see how he would respond. Here is the audio of Susan talking to her father.
Hi Jerry, this is Susan. I want to wish you a very happy birthday, and I want to tell you that I cherish the moments that we had together back in Paris in 1980, and I wish that our relationship could have continued back then, but I guess it just wasn't meant to be at that time. But I hope that now that can be different. Love, your daughter, Susan.
And there was the voice of Suzan Lewis.
Yes, I don't see how anybody can fail to be moved by that. It was very emotional, and you could see, if you could see the video, which of course you can't right now, but there are wonderful pictures of Susan in Rick's book, and you'll see it immediately that she was a spitting image of Jerry Lewis for sure.
Yes, she was. I think Susan honestly looked more like Jerry than any of his other biological children. The interesting thing is, when Susan called me and said, if you're connected with Jerry Lewis, I'm wondering if there's any way that you can help me connect with him. I met my father and saw him for only one day, and that was in 1980, and Susan was calling me in I guess it was about 2008, 2009, sometime around there. And I called Gary Lewis after she told me on our phone call that she had met Gary at a concert. And so I called Gary after we got off the phone to check her credibility, because I heard a lot of people telling me that they were somehow related to Jerry Lewis. And I got Gary on the phone. I said, Gary, I got a call from a woman who tells me that she is your half-sister. And Gary said, oh, not another one. And I said, well, she seemed quite sincere. Her name is Susan. And he said, Rick, does Susan have a French name? I said, yes, Susan Minoret. He said, I met her. He said she came backstage before a concert, and I could only talk to her for about a minute. And Gary said, I talked to her, and Rick, honest to goodness, she looks exactly like my father in drag. And then he said, the other thing is, I believed her. And that gave me the inspiration to kind of continue on. But yes, there are pictures of Susan in the book, and the entire story of Susan, who was homeless when she contacted me. We did a lot of things together, including I arranged for Gary and Susan to do a DNA test on live television. And sadly, Susan found her way back to living on the streets. But this is documented in the real Jerry Lewis story, and it's quite dramatic, I think.
I do too, and it's sad, because all she really wanted was for him to acknowledge her and for them to have some kind of relationship. And he couldn't do that, or wouldn't do that.
Well, he couldn't do it, and there are reasons why he couldn't do it. But if you go to Amazon.com and buy the book, you'll see the answers in there. And it's really not a joking matter, because it's a very serious story. Got a couple more true and false questions?
Yes, indeedy.
Okay.
Question number 5, true or false. Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis became partners in 1946.
Oh, that seems very easy. Anybody who could look things up on the internet might know the answer to that. Or not.
Or not.
Uh-huh. Go ahead.
Question number 6, true or false. Jerry Lewis's name at birth was Joseph Levitch.
Now, there's another one that people will look up, and many people will think that this is a true answer. Maybe it is, because there are many areas on the internet that will say that Jerry's name at birth was Joseph Levitch. Got another one?
Certainly do. Question number 7, true or false. Jerry Lewis was merely his stage name until he had it legally changed to his legal name in the late 1940s.
Meaning having it changed to Jerry Lewis? Is that what we're...
Yes.
That's what we're asking? Okay.
Yes.
And how about one more for now, and then we'll move on to something else.
Okay, question number 8, true or false. Martin and Lewis first performed together in Atlantic City, New Jersey in 1946.
Wow. I think everybody's heard the story of how Martin and Lewis got together. So that should be an easy question. I'm not going to give any indication whether it's true or false. And there'll be some more questions, and then a little later on we will give you the answers to all of these fascinating questions. If you are an expert on Jerry Lewis or Martin and Lewis, you're going to be very interested in knowing the answer to the questions. Right now, we're going to hear a song by Jerry Lewis. Jerry was married to Patti Lewis, whose professional name was Patti Palmer. She was a big band singer during the 1940s, and they met and were married. And on the event of their 6th anniversary, Jerry made a beautiful recording. He wrote this song, and here it is. Listen to it. And it is absolutely beautiful. And then we'll follow it up with a few comments.
They call me a comet, they call me a clown, but even a clown can feel. When I take off the grease paint and put the mask down, I return to a world that's real. And that's where an angel waits when day is through. If you've never seen an angel, I'll describe one to you. One night, two precious stars came falling from the skies, and they became the eyes of Patti. A sunbeam came along to shine for just a while, then turned into a smile for Patti. And to complete this work of art, out of love and faith, they made her heart. And now the job is done. I thank the Lord above for giving me my lovely Patti. And to complete this work of art, out of love and faith, they made her heart. And now the job is done. I thank the Lord above for giving me my lovely Patti.
And there was a beautiful rendition by Jerry Lewis, whose voice at that time didn't sound like the voice of the singing Jerry Lewis that we all know. It was a natural voice, very heartfelt, as he wrote and recorded that song in honor of his 6th wedding anniversary to his beautiful wife, Patti. And I can attest to the fact that she was beautiful because I knew Patti very well. But I can also attest to the fact that this story is very important in our book, in the real Jerry Lewis story. You can't take away from the value of his skill as a performer, as an entertainer. The song was very dramatic and might even make people misty listening to it. The only downside is that when Jerry recorded that song, his girlfriend Lynn was pregnant with his biological daughter Suzan. And to compound the situation, while Jerry was married to Patti and singing this wonderful song on their 6th anniversary, and while Lynn was pregnant with the soon-to-be biological daughter of Jerry, he was also cheating on Lynn because he had promised to marry actress
Mary Hatcher.
Mary Hatcher is right. Very good, Linda. Who, in some very important columns in the newspapers, had claimed that Jerry had promised to marry her as soon as his divorce from Patti was final. This was in the early 1950s. The divorce from Patti was final in 1983, and so that marriage never took place. So there is the complex story about the song that Jerry recorded for Patti.
Wow, that is a real head shaker. It really is.
Yes,
I mean,
it is.
to think that Jerry was what? You said he was only 25 when he recorded this song.
Well, I didn't say that, but you're right.
Yeah. How young he was with all this extramarital stuff going on already.
Well, the interesting thing is that when Jerry was a teenager and a kid, he was, well, jerky in a funny way. And nobody wanted their daughter anywhere near him. Girls thought he was a skinny, scrawny weirdo because that's how he behaved. You know, he was Jerry Lewis. That was inside of him. And the girls didn't talk to him. The mothers or fathers didn't want their daughters anywhere near Jerry Lewis because they didn't trust him because he was a loose cannon and he was wacky. So Jerry didn't have any girlfriends until about an hour after he became famous. He was still the same Jerry Lewis when he became famous, but now all the girls were throwing themselves onto Jerry. And, you know, I would assume it must be very intoxicating to one part of your life you weren't getting any attention, and then the next part of your life you've got movie stars. You've got Mary Hatcher, and our listeners to this podcast can Google and look her up. She was very attractive.
Are you going
and so, can you blame him? What do you think, Linda? You're a girl.
I think, yes, you can blame him. Who else can we blame?
Well, I don't know. The girls that were throwing themselves on Jerry,
well,
who
it's a shame
didn't care that he was married.
Actually, he got married a little too early. You know, he got married before any of this started happening. So
yes.
It should have been the other way around, you know.
Well, Jerry had mentioned on a few interviews that he gave when Gary was born. Jerry was 19 years old when Gary was born, 3 months after he and Patti were married. And Jerry says that he lost his youth because he did have to go to work. He had to make sure he was working, and he did have to support his wife and child, which he did very well until years later. But so a very tough situation. So young to be married, and then all of a sudden life changed, and now these gorgeous chicks are throwing themselves at him, and I guess it's very hard to insulate yourself from that. Did that sound smart?
That sounds really smart, Rick.
Thank you, Linda.
Yes.
Hey, how about a couple of true and falsers here?
Okie dokie.
By the way, folks, you're listening to the Real Jerry Lewis Story podcast. I hope you're finding this interesting. And don't forget, the book is available on Amazon and other places. But the most convenient thing to do is go to Amazon.com, type in the Real Jerry Lewis Story, and there you'll see the book. And in most cases, you can have this book in your hands in a day or two, or if you elect to get the ebook version, the Kindle version, you will have it instantly. Linda.
Okay, number 9, true or false? Jerry Lewis's first son was born with the name Cary Levitch. His name was subsequently changed to Gary Levitch, and then to Gary Lewis.
That's an interesting question because it's a three-parter. How will our audience score that? With 3 different marks, or just one true or false for the whole thing?
I think it has to be one true or false for the whole thing because it's listed under one question.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, listeners,
It's either all true or it isn't.
Okay. That's an interesting way of putting it. Got another one?
Yes, number 10, true or false. With help from his father, Gary Lewis created a successful rock and roll band.
Say that again?
With help from his father.
Well, yeah. Uh-huh.
Who would be Jerry Lewis?
Jerry Lewis.
Gary Lewis created a successful rock and roll band.
Well, I know that he did have a successful rock and roll band. As a matter of fact, at the time we're recording this, I still represent Gary Lewis of Gary Lewis and the Playboys. Mm-hmm. So the band is still going. The band tours, and they are quite good. But that doesn't necessarily answer the question. So I hope that the listeners... And one more question for now, and then we'll pick it up with some more later on.
Okay, number 11, true or false? Gary Lewis was born on July 31st, 1946.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have a real treat in store for you now. The entertainer I'm about to introduce, well, we have something in common. She and I, at one time in our separate careers, were Jerry Lewis's protégés, and eventually performed together on the stage. As a matter of fact, we might have been a team.
As a team, we'd be up there now. You want to live high on the line. You want to have two hearts that rhyme. Built on the ring, songs that sing, eyes that shine, wings on the vine. You gotta have me go with you all of the
That was Judy Scott singing on the Jerry Lewis Show in 1957. And now I would like to say hello to Judy Scott.
Well, thank you, Rick. What a wonderful introduction.
I made it up all by myself. Was it good?
You sure did.
So, Judy, how did you happen to become Jerry's opening act on tour?
Rick, I am originally from Colorado, and after I had graduated high school, I was singing in Denver. I had my own television show, and I was starring in all the summer stock shows. At that particular time, I was starring in South Pacific. I was playing the lead Nellie Forbush. And the reviews came out, and at the time, there were name bands. The end of the big band era. And there was a band by the name of Ralph Flanagan.
Yeah.
And Ralph Flanagan was originally one of the arrangers for Glenn Miller, believe it or not.
Wow.
And he read this review of me, and he got in touch with me, and my parents said, "You're not going to audition for him, you're staying home, you're going to go to college." Well, I broke down my parents. I said, "Just let me hear what he has to say about me." I auditioned. He offered me a job for the summer where I'd be chaperoned with he and his wife, and we're going to go into New York, and we were going to do a coast-to-coast television show at the Frank Davis Meadowbrook in New York.
Yeah.
And then I got an opportunity for a job at the Copacabana in New York City. At that time, upstairs in the lounge, they used to have singers who would rotate. We'd do a 15-minute set every hour on the hour, starting about 7 o'clock in the evening up until about 1 o'clock in the morning. I got that job, and one night as I was singing a song called Orange Colored Sky, the maitre d' came over to me and said, Jerry Lewis is in the audience, and he would like for you to join him at his table. And I said, oh my goodness. So I was all of 17 years old. And Jerry said to me, and he was sitting with his manager, Gluckman.
Ernie Glucksman, my uncle, yes.
Who's your uncle?
Yes.
Oh, right. So he was sitting with Ernie Glucksman, and I don't remember who else was there, but there was. And Jerry said to me, congratulations. I said, for what? He said, you're opening for me at the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas. It's my first opening without Dean Martin.
Wow.
I said, what? He said, well, I've auditioned over 300 girl singers, and you're the one. He said, do you have a manager? I said, yes. He said, well, have your manager get in touch with my manager, who was Ernie, and I'll see you in 2 months. So that was it. The next time I saw Jerry Lewis was we were flying. I flew to California to meet him for rehearsals, and then we got on a plane and flew to Vegas. And at that time, I was using the name. My middle name was Gay. I was using the name Judy Gay. And he said to me, "That ain't going to work on the marquee. I'm changing your name." So I said, all right. So when I got off the plane, he said, your new name is going to be Scott. So it became, he said, I'm naming you after my new son. His name is Scotty, and your name is going to be Scott. And that's how I got the name Judy Scott. And we had a rehearsal 2 days before opening night. And it was the biggest opening in show business because it was the first time Jerry Lewis was without Dean Martin. And when I looked out and Jerry was beside me. We were both looking out at the audience, and I see Desi Arnaz and Lucille Ball and Luella Parsons and
Wow.
Walter Winchell, and at that time it was Robert Wagner and Natalie Wood. Well, the list goes on and on and on. And Jerry said to me, "Are you nervous?" I said, I said, I think I'm going to throw up. He said, "Well, don't worry. They came to see me, not you."
That's very funny.
And that was it. And I went out, and the rest is history. I got fabulous reviews, and Jerry was very, very, very good to me. But it was not the most successful tour for Jerry, because he'd always been working with Dean Martin, and he was used to getting, rave reviews and everything. And now that he was on his own, the critics were not so wonderful to him.
Right.
So he became more of an introvert. All of a sudden, this guy who was out there and wonderful and everything suddenly was locking himself in the dressing room before showtime and just really didn't come out and was moody. And there was a whole other, everybody was tiptoeing around him. So
how was at that time, how did he behave towards you? Was he a gentleman? Was he flirtatious in any way?
No. He was. He and Patti. He wanted to take on the role of really a mentor, and like I was a daughter to him. He didn't have any girls in his family,
right?
And they both treated me like a daughter. And he used to call me Snot Nose, and he actually gave me a charm that said to my own little snot nose, and
how endearing.
Yeah, right. And so he really was. No, I would say later on, it became a little bit of. I can't exactly explain what it was.
Could you say it was a little sexual tension?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I would say that. And I was too young, really, at that point, to really understand it.
Yeah.
But he never went. He never went over the line. Let me put it that way. No, he never did. It's just it was an uncomfortable feeling.
Right.
And as in the book, as you know, what happened the night at the Palace.
Now, Judy, of course, in the book we have a whole story about a debacle that happened at the Palace Theater, because originally you were supposed to open for Jerry at the Palace Theater, which would have been a great feather in your cap, and certainly something to be proud of. But something happened between you and Jerry, and maybe it was because nothing happened between you and Jerry.
Exactly.
But
yeah.
But he sort of changed his tune a little bit. What was the name? I mean, you were being teased, but not only by Jerry, from what you told me, but also by some of the crew and staff.
Right. Well, Jerry traveled at that time. We were doing all these television shows, and we traveled to the Chez Paris in Chicago, the Fontainebleau in Florida, and he traveled with a troupe of musicians and dancers.
Right.
And of course, I had just turned 18 then, and I came from a small town, and I was, at that time, you had to be a virgin till you get married, or you get stabbed in the heart,
Yeah, I know.
And I was very protective of that. But I used to get teased about being a virgin all the time, with the whole crew constantly, wait till you get it, you're going to love it, and you don't know what you're missing, and blah, blah, not Jerry. Jerry didn't do that. No, Jerry. It was the crew.
Yeah.
And so one of the parties, closing night at the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas, my girlfriends from Denver, Colorado, came to see the show. And I took them to the cast party afterwards. And I said, listen, I want you to do me a favor. I said, when they start teasing me about being a virgin, I said, I'm going to fabricate a story saying that, the joke's on you. I was never a virgin. I was married and it was annulled. And I want you to when I say that, I want you to confirm that that was true.
Right.
So naturally, of course, it happened at the party, and they started to tease me. I said, the whole time I've fooled you because I've been married and it was annulled, and I'm not a virgin, so ha ha ha. In the meantime, the party went on, and I never got to tell them that story was fabricated and it was a joke.
Mm-hmm.
But
Of course, at that point, who knows what they would have believed?
Right, exactly.
It would have I think it would have just complicated matters. And now, if you try to turn the story back again.
Right. So, but I forgot all about it, quite
Mm-hmm.
honestly. And the following week, Jerry opened at the Palace Theater in New York.
Mm-hmm.
And I was not going with him. At the time, Edie Gourmet was going to open for him.
Right.
But Jerry wanted me to be there at the opening. And he sat me in the front row. And the next thing I know, somebody comes to get me. Jerry wants to see you in his dressing room. Really? I get into his dressing room, and it was crowded. Everybody was congratulating him. And he kicked everybody out, just like that. And then he said to me, "You're a phony." And I said to him, what are you talking about? He said, "You're a phony." He said, you were never a virgin. And he carries on about that. I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "You've been married and it's been annulled." I said, "Jerry, oh my God." I said, "That was a joke." I said, everybody was teasing me so much that I pulled one over on the crew because I wanted to stop the harassing. Mm-hmm. And I said, "But it was a joke." But he didn't believe me. And that was the end of my relationship with Jerry because of that.
Wow. In the book, there is more detail about that story.
Yeah. Okay.
And of course, we'll if the readers are interested, which they have to be, they'll learn. I give some opinions there on why Jerry would have gotten so angry about that, because it's very possible Jerry might have been lied to in other situations.
Right.
And
said that, right?
Yes, and so we'll let the readers read that. That is a fascinating story, and I thank you for telling that. Are you still a virgin?
Yes, I am, and my son will attest to it.
That's great. Before I introduced you on this program, I played a few clips of your music, and I played a little bit of the soundtrack from that very first Jerry Lewis solo television program.
Oh my goodness!
And
yeah.
And what a terrific song! You did it so well. Did you have a lot of rehearsal when you came?
Not at all. Maybe one day.
Wow.
One day rehearsal.
And one other question though about that. You had to be lip syncing because nobody could dance and jump around, but you did it so perfectly. It didn't appear that you were lip syncing, and
I was lip syncing, and that was interesting too because I had never lip synced.
Well, Judy, this was very interesting and a lot of fun, and certainly I appreciate your being so candid with me and with the readers because your portion of the book really kind of brings it to life, and here you are still performing. And you are certainly a part of the real Jerry Lewis story. And
absolutely. And it seems surreal, actually, that I did all those things, and that I really was so blessed in my life, getting to have this opportunity with Jerry, and it was a good opportunity. And of course, there's always stories, and I have my stories too. Mm-hmm. And the best thing is that I got to meet you, and get to know you again. And I think I'm going to have you manage me to do my opening act.
Well, let's do it.
I'm going to videotape it in another month, and I will send it off to you if I like it.
Oh, that's great.
Well, look at it.
It's going to be wonderful, and I'm sure this is now the beginning of the second half of your career, which is starting right now. Okay.
All right. Give my love to Sheila.
I will do that.
And thanks so much, Rick. It was wonderful talking to you.
You too, and thank you, Judy, and we'll talk to you soon. And friends, here is Judy Scott today.
Did you ever know that you're my hero? And everything I would like to be. I can fly higher than an eagle, 'cause you are the wind beneath my wings.
And ladies and gentlemen, that is Judy Scott.
You're listening to The Rick Saphire Show.
Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis were no strangers to commercials. As a matter of fact, here is a commercial that they recorded at the Paramount Studios for their current movie at the time. It was called The Caddy. And it's about a 30-second radio spot. Listen carefully to it.
Hi, everybody. This is Dean Martin.
And Jerry Lewis.
We'd like to tell you all about our latest and funniest picture for Paramount.
Of course, you mean The Caddy.
Oh, but of course. You know, Jerry, I don't remember the last time I had so much fun making a picture.
Boy, I'll say. How about that scene when I wrecked the department store that I'm working in?
Yeah, and what about the scene when I come home and find a strange, and I do mean strange, man in my bed, and it turns out to be you?
Tell him about the terrific game of golf I played. Go on, tell him.
Terrific. I've never seen golf played that way before. Crazy, man, crazy.
I hate to brag, folks, but I think The Caddy is the funniest picture we've made. No kidding. It's got 90 riotous minutes of howls, gags, fun, and more heartwarming entertainment than you and the family ever saw.
You'll love Jerry and me and The Caddy.
Take my word for it. The Caddy is the most hilarious picture we've ever made. Come on and join the fun. See Paramount's The Caddy.
Yeah, The Caddy.
Now, Linda, that you've heard that radio spot that Martin and Lewis did, let's hear something that was recorded at the same time they recorded that radio spot, which actually got them into trouble with J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI.
Looking forward to that.
Here it comes. If there are any children in the room right now, please send them out to the grocery store to pick up a carton of Lucky's or Chesterfields. This is very interesting.
Is that all right, you cocksucker?
How was that, you shitheel?
Without reading it?
I'm with you.
Okay. Next, you still rolling?
Still rolling?
All right, start.
You can cut that bit out.
Okay.
This is Dean Martin.
And Jerry Lewis asking you to see our newest and funniest picture to date.
Of course, you mean The Caddy.
You bet I do. The Caddy is filled with 90 hilarious minutes of howls, gags, fun, and heartwarming entertainment that the entire family will enjoy.
Crazy, man, crazy.
No doubt about it, Dean. This is the funniest picture we've ever made. No kidding, folks. We're sensational. Take my word for it. Come on and join the fun. See Paramount's The Caddy. Yeah. It'll make you shit.
Cut out make. You ready? You ain't doing a fucking thing. You're just standing there. This is Dean Martin.
And Jerry Lewis with him. We will even fail, you cocksuckers.
Well, this guy with TB gets through here. Ready? Shh. This is Dean Martin.
And Jerry Lewis with a reminder to see our newest and funniest motion picture ever, The Caddy.
Oh, he's right, folks. Come on and join the fun in the most righteous 90 minutes of howls.
Righteous? Where the fuck do you see righteous? That's riotous, you greaseball. Righteous. What is this, a religious picture?
I ain't up. This is religious Martin and Jerry Lewis. Well, there's 5 fucking lines, we can't get through it. This is Dean Martin.
And Jerry Lewis with a reminder to see our newest and funniest motion picture ever, The Caddy.
Oh, he's right, folks. Come on and join the fun in the most wonderful 90 minutes of howls and gags you ever saw.
We'll be seeing you in Paramount's The Caddy.
Yep, The Caddy.
With a big cock on it.
Okay. Let's go. Let's go to lunch.
My ears are burning. That didn't get on the radio, did it?
Well, it's very interesting that you'd ask me that question because you edited the book and you know the answer. No, that didn't get on the radio. maybe not until the 1980s or 1990s when somebody aired it. But those outtakes were supposed to be, you know, they say that they were cut and landed on the cutting room floor, and they were remanded to the trash cans, but they weren't thrown away. Some unscrupulous technician at Paramount saved them and started circulating them, not on tape the way they were recorded, but on an acetate record, on a disc or a transcription. Somehow somebody got angry at Martin and Lewis for recording this, and a copy of the disc was sent to the FBI, and J. Edgar Hoover got involved to investigate to see if this recording with the naughty stuff was being sold interstate, because that would violate the laws against the interstate sale of pornography, which was a very serious matter back in those days. But you'll read all of the details about that, including you'll see a transcription of the actual words uttered by Dean and Jerry during that very unusual recording of a promo for the Caddy. And now, Linda, I'm going to ask you to give us a couple of more true and false questions, and then it's going to be about time for us to bid our audience a fond farewell.
All right, here we go. Question number 12, true or false? Jerry Lewis had an extramarital affair with actress Marilyn Monroe.
Very important question, because Jerry did claim that he had that affair. It's all in the book, but we're going to answer that true and false question for you in just a couple of minutes. Another question, Linda.
Question 13, true or false? Gary Lewis's band was known as Gary Lewis and the Playboys when they made their debut at Disneyland in 1964.
Okay, let's have another true and false question.
Number 14, true or false? Gary Lewis's musical career was put on hold as Gary served a tour of Army duty in Vietnam.
Very interesting story. As a matter of fact, Jerry Lewis did some interviews talking about Gary's involvement and how he reacted to his Vietnam experience. We're going to be giving the answers to these questions after question number 15.
True or false? Jerry Lewis was the founder and president of the Muscular Dystrophy Association.
Those are all of the true and false questions we'll have for you right now. And Linda, I'm going to give you the honor of letting our audience know which were true, which were false, so the audience could see how they did. And what is the answer?
The answer is they are all false.
Wait a minute. You're kidding. I haven't read the book, so I don't know.
That's what you get for being asleep while you wrote your book.
Oh, my goodness. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the answer to every one of those questions is false. And to gain the impact, number one, you should read the book, which I hope you will. And number two, you can listen to this podcast over again, hear the questions. And if you're wondering how is it possible that the answers to these questions are all false, all of the explanations are detailed in depth in The Real Jerry Lewis Story, which you can buy on Amazon.
Hi, this is Gary Lewis. Since the mid-1960s, I've been the proud leader and vocalist of the rock and roll group Gary Lewis and the Playboys. Back in 1965, my music heroes were the Beatles. I was a dedicated fan, yet I didn't feel the slightest bit of remorse when I knocked them out of first place on Billboard's top 10 music charts with my first record release, This Diamond Ring. Between 1965 and 1966, my group had 7 top 10 songs. Success was a team effort. I had help from my producer Snuffy Garrett and arranger Leon Russell, and from Dick Biondi, who hosted a nationally syndicated radio program out of Pasadena, California. Biondi was not only instrumental in popularizing Gary Lewis and the Playboys, but he was a great guy. I would bring him promotional copies of my group's new singles, and he would immediately play them on the air, creating a demand for our music. Thanks to disc jockeys like Cousin Brucey, Bruce Morrow, of WABC Radio in New York City, our popularity grew from coast to coast. What is interesting about my entertaining career is that I'm just one member of the family's show business dynasty that began in the 1920s. The Roaring Twenties had prohibition, gangsters, flappers, burlesque, and vaudeville. My grandparents, Daniel and Rachel Levitch, were entertainers on the vaudeville circuit, performing their songs and snappy patter under the stage names of Danny and Ray Lewis. My grandparents were married just over a year when their only child, my father, Jerome Levitch, was born. My dad would ultimately become known as Jerry Lewis. While just a teenager, my father started his show business career as a record mime. During the 15-minute act, he lip-synced to popular records of the day while wearing outrageous costumes and contorting his face in numerous funny expressions. In 1944, while performing as an intermission act under the name of Jerry Lewis, my dad met a beautiful and talented big band singer named Esther Kalanico, known professionally as Patti Palmer. My parents married the following year, and I was born and named Carrie Harold Lee Lewis. At the age of 2, my parents renamed me Gary, and eventually I followed my unique path into the family show business tradition. The story of how the 5 of us became successful show business troopers and the scores of people whose lives we impacted and who impacted our lives is documented as never before in the pages ahead. Some of the facts in this book will seem like fantasy, something that could only happen in the movies. However, author Rick Saphire proves truth is stranger than fiction. So please fasten your seatbelts and join me for the ride through the real Jerry Lewis story. Yours truly, Gary Lewis.
I would truly be remiss if I didn't play one song by the beautiful Patti Palmer. This is Gary Lewis's mother, Jerry Lewis's first wife, the mother of Gary, Ronnie, Scotty, Chris, Anthony, and Joseph Lewis, the big band singer with Ted Fiorito and his orchestra, and as we listen here, Jimmy Dorsey and his orchestra. It's Patti Palmer singing her 1945 hit, Don't You Know I Care.
Don't you know I care? Or don't you care to know? If you know I care, how can you hurt me so? Darling, you are part of every breath I take. Will you break my heart or give my heart a break? I can't figure out what love's all about and where I fit into your scheme. Am I wasting time? Please tell me, 'cause I'm down to my last dream. Won't you please be fair? Love me Don't you know I care? Or don't you care to know? Won't you please be fair? Love me or let me go. Don't you know I care? Or don't you care to know?
Linda, we're going to wrap this podcast up right now. This was a lot of fun, interesting, and I hope our audience found it interesting, and I hope you found it interesting.
I found it interesting and fun and entertaining, and I'm really lucky because I have my own signed copy of the real Jerry Lewis story.
Yes, I know. They're rare. They're hard to get. By the way, did I mention to the audience at any time during this podcast that yes, I was Jerry Lewis's personal manager, and we did have a wonderful time together on the road, in private conversation, and there's so much of that you'll read about in the real Jerry Lewis story. And in the words of that famous TV detective Columbo, I have just one more thing. We listened to beautiful Patti Palmer, beautiful both in voice and in style. But there was one thing that Patti seemed to leave out of her book, titled I Laughed Till I Cried, 36 Years of Marriage to Jerry Lewis. You see, nobody ever asked Patti that I remember how she got the stage name Patti Palmer. And it certainly wasn't mentioned in her biography, and I don't ever remember Jerry mentioning it. I don't remember anybody mentioning it. Well, the real Jerry Lewis story mentions it. You see, unbeknownst to most of the world, Patti Lewis, a.k.a. Patti Palmer, was married before she was married to Jerry Lewis. And she was married to an entertainer, singer, dancer, and band leader by the name of James De Palma, known professionally as Jimmy Palmer. When Jimmy Palmer and Patti Palmer were divorced, there was about a $125 financial settlement, but more importantly, Patti chose to keep the professional name Patti Palmer. And to take us to the end of this 1-hour podcast, ladies and gentlemen, I present the music of Jimmy Palmer and his orchestra. This is NPC, the National Podcasting Company.